For my last trip to Walt Disney World, we stayed a couple nights at Disney's Port Orleans Riverside Resort, which, from what I've seen, typically gets a lot of hype. So I was really excited to stay there. There were a lot of things we didn't like, but there were definitely some cons that we took away. So I am going to share just kind of my honest review, pros and cons from staying at Disney's Port Orleans Riverside Resort. So let's talk about it. Hey, I'm Kinsey, a Disney loving mama and travel agent who helps families tailor their vacation to fit their budget, pace, and personalities. Okay, so we're going to start off with basically an overview of Riverside because some of you or most of you probably aren't super familiar with what to expect from this resort. So just to give you an overview of what the theming is, the type of resort it is, location, different things like that, we're going to start off there. So real quick, I'm going to read what Disney specifically has for the Riverside Resort. From the stately white column mansions of Magnolia Bend to Alligator's Bayou, quaint backwoods cottages, delight in a picturesque setting that evokes the romance of rural Louisiana. Take a short walk along the Sassagoula River to Disney's Port Orleans Resort French Quarter, known for southern specialties like gumbo, jambalaya, and beignets. It's kind of themed to that Louisiana, New Orleans. The rooms, which we'll get into, are Princess and the Frog themed, if you're familiar with that movie. So that's kind of what you can expect theming wise. As it mentioned, you can walk to French Quarter. So Port Orleans Resort has two resorts or two parts, which is Riverside and French Quarter. We stayed at Riverside specifically, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Both of those resorts, or Port Orleans as a whole, is in the moderate category. So you're going to find things here like a water slide. It's going to have slightly nicer rooms, different things like that. As far as the location, it is going to be in the Disney Springs area. You can actually take boat transportation from the resort over to Disney Springs because it is that close to it. And then as far as transportation, while you can take a boat to Disney Springs, all other transportation to all four parks or water parks is going to be via bus. Recreation and amenities. There are multiple pools at this resort. Like I said, since it's a moderate resort, it does have a water slide. They have Old Man Island, which is more of that popular area with the water slide, with a pool bar, and even with a whirlpool. And then they have throughout the resort itself 5 leisure pools that you can experience. As far as the dining options go, they have Riverside Mill Food Court, River Roost, which is a bar service, Muddy Rivers, which is bar service, and Boat Rides Dining Hall. So with moderate comes a little bit more dining options versus with those value resorts, you typically just see a food court, and that's your options at the resort. Okay, so like I said, I just wanted to make that part super quick. You can read more about the resort itself on the Disney website. See things like the amenities, recreation, dining, depending on what you're looking for or what information you want. So I'm not going to waste your time with that. We're going to jump into the review, starting with where we stayed. So we actually booked a standard view. We were upgraded to a water view upon arrival. So the room itself doesn't really change. It's more of the view. That being said, this is a friendly reminder to check in at the front desk or at guest services upon arrival, or even if you check in with the app, because this time I did still check in with the app because initially the lines were really long and we wanted to go do some exploring. So I was like, whatever, we're just going to check in with the app and go from there. But after we did some exploring, we were going to the party that night and we still didn't have a room. And so I was like, I'm going to go see if there's any rooms available, even if it's not some of the requests that we initially had. We just wanted to get in a room. So I was able to chat with a cast member, get upgraded to a water view based on availability. And we still got like our request close to a bus stop was our main request, and we were granted that. So this is just your sign to check in while you can check in at the app, check in at the front desk guest services area, because typically they can work with you a little bit and you can actually communicate more of what you're looking for. Or if you check in with the app on your way there or with whatever you're doing, if you need to follow up, this is your sign to go ask a cast member. As far as our room, I do want to give you just a super quick look at what that looks like. So take a look at our room here. got was a recently renovated room. So that theming, the way that it looks, all the decor and stuff, that was recently renovated. It was gorgeous. Overall we loved the room. I loved the room. I thought it was very spacious. It was just my husband and I at the time, so there was definitely plenty of space for us. But yeah, overall, no complaints about the room from us. Now, piggybacking off of how much we did love the room, let's dive into some of the pros and cons of this resort from our point of view. As I mentioned with the room itself, the resort as a whole is absolutely gorgeous. Even just reading you guys what the theming is, some of the clips that I've shown you guys here, the room itself, I mean, overall, it just has that, like it says, the Louisiana laid back vibe. Obviously, as you saw, the room does have that Princess and the Frog theming. My daughter has always been a huge Princess and the Frog fan, so I really think she would enjoy this room. Maybe she would have enjoyed it a little bit more last year when she was like really, really into the movie. But this is a perfect spot if you do have a Princess and the Frog, Tiana lover in your family. This would be a great resort and room to stay in. Another huge pro is, like mentioned in that overview that I read, you can walk to the French Quarter. And one reason I really like that is because one thing that I do like to do while I am at Disney World is explore resorts, or kind of like meander around, look in different shops, look what different resorts have to offer. Because again, this was our first day at Riverside. We haven't stayed at French Quarter. So I do love the fact that we could just walk right over to French Quarter. We could kind of look around. It looked gorgeous from the outside as well. And even when we walked into the lobby, it was super New Orleans French Quarter vibes, as the name suggests. And of course, why did we walk over there? To get those New Orleans beignets, and they were delicious. So this was a huge pro for us, is that it was walking distance, and it was a gorgeous walk at that. And then of course we loved being able to get those beignets. They're Mickey shaped, of course, which, you know, in my opinion, everything tastes better Mickey shaped. So this was a huge pro for us as well. Another pro from my point of view, if you guys have been here for a minute or even have followed me over on my Instagram, you probably know by now that bus transportation is my least favorite around Walt Disney World Resort. I don't really know if it would be anyone's favorite. If it is your favorite, you know, let me know. I would be interested to hear that and hear why. But it is my least favorite way to get around Walt Disney World. Some of those other transportation options include boat, Skyliner, and monorail. So one pro from this resort is that you do have boat transportation options to get to Disney Springs. This trip specifically, we didn't have a lot of time, but on our second day, we spent so much time at Epcot, and we didn't leave super early the next morning when we were supposed to leave. So since we left a little bit earlier than we planned, we did end up taking that boat to Disney Springs. It was really nice to have that option over a bus. And it was dark when we went, but it was overall like a gorgeous boat ride, and it was really cool to come into Disney Springs on the water. So something that I would definitely suggest taking advantage of, or doing at least once if you're staying at Port Orleans in general. All right, now it's time to dive into the cons. So while the last pro was the bus transportation, the first and biggest con for us overall was the overall transportation. Like I mentioned, bus is my least favorite. So not only was the main option bus to Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, water parks, like there was so much that was bus only. And this is true at, I mean, in reality, multiple resorts. It's not just the Port Orleans resorts that have this. There's some resorts that don't even have a boat to Disney Springs, and everything is just straight bus. So it's not that they're the only ones that have that. It's just that our first ever stay was at a Skyliner resort, where we had the Skyliner to go to 2 of the 4 parks. And ever since then, that's kind of just been our favorite way to take Disney transportation, or to use Disney transportation. And so having to go to our park days on the bus and the bus only was a huge con for us, because not only do you have to wait for the buses get jam packed, but with Riverside specifically, and some other resorts, but just for Riverside, since we're talking this one, it does have multiple bus stops. If you remember when we were talking about the room, one of the requests I made was to be close to a bus stop. If possible, we did get that, so we didn't have a long walk actually to the bus stop. But a big con for that is, one, this is what happened to us, and one of the reasons why I really was turned off to the bus transportation at this resort is with multiple bus stops. We woke up early. We knew we wanted to rope drop Epcot, so we got up early. We got to the bus stop early. We saw the TV that said your bus will be here at XYZ time. The first bus came and it was full because there were a couple other stops before our bus stop and other people were getting on. So they couldn't even let anybody else on the bus. So it left without us. Even after we woke up and made a point to get there early, we had to wait for the next bus. And it honestly took like 10 more minutes. And it was just the longest I've ever waited for a bus. It was a huge con that the first bus came and we couldn't even get on it. And we still had a semi good rope dropping experience that day, but we definitely could have like crushed it if we wouldn't have had to wait so long for the bus. And then on the backside of that, when you are coming home from the parks or coming back to the resort on the bus, you're not always the first bus stop. So especially if you're the last bus stop, that is just a huge con for you because there's multiple bus stops before it gets to you to get picked up, i.e., there's lots of chances it's going to be full and you're going to have to wait and wait and wait. Or when you're coming back, you're going to have to wait and wait and wait and wait before you can even get off the bus, go back to your room, and go to bed after a long day. So this was the biggest con for us, something that I really didn't like. I would say that overall, this wouldn't keep us from staying there again. I would just say this is definitely something to note if you're looking at staying there, i.e., if you're planning to get to the bus stop at 7:15, maybe plan on getting there at 7 instead, because there's a chance that one bus is going to miss you or you're just going to have to wait a little bit longer. Not something that would divert us from ever staying there again, but like I said, I just prefer having other options and not having those multiple bus stops if possible. So if you're planning to stay here for the theming and all of that, and you're willing to do like a minivan or a lift for a couple days, like on those big days that you really want to rope drop something, but on the other days you're fine with getting there at whatever time you're getting there, by all means use a minivan or lift for 2 of the days, and the 2 days that are going to be a little bit more laid back for you and it doesn't matter so much, use the bus. So it really just kind of depends on the scenario. For what we were trying to do, it just really became a huge con for us at this resort. And then again, tying into the transportation, while the view of the boat transportation and experience was very calming and gorgeous, beautiful, like honestly, the boat ride itself was great, but it was also slow. So we timed it poorly. We got to the dock as another boat was leaving, so we had to wait for the other boat. It was actually already there, but we had to wait for it to dock, start letting people on, wait for a couple other people to get on, and then go. And then we did have to stop at French Quarter to pick up a couple people there before we proceeded on to Disney Springs, which was a decent boat drive in itself. Again, it was beautiful to see, especially at night with all the Disney Springs lights as you pull in, the balloon in the air. I mean, I'll put that here so you can see it because it was gorgeous, but it was just slow. So overall, this resort was really great. I'm glad we stayed there. We would stay there again, probably not anytime soon, especially with our girls being so small as far as staying there with them. But with the transportation, that was the biggest con for us. Everything else was a great experience. I do want to note that we had a decent walk from our area. We were in that Magnolia Bend area to the lobby. I don't know, it was like maybe 5 minutes. I do know and have heard other people kind of complain that that's too far to go to the main lobby, to get to the gift shops, to get to the dining. And I get that, but I will say that for us, that is something that doesn't really bother me. I wouldn't count that as a con. Even when we stayed at Art of Animation in the Little Mermaid rooms, which is the farthest room back from everything, or the farthest building back from everything, that just didn't bother me much. I know a lot of people really consider it a con because, especially at the end of the day, they don't want to walk so far back to their room. but there's so much to see. And the resort was so pretty. It's like I liked walking by the pool, over the bridge, over the river. It didn't bother me. So I will say that that's something to keep in mind if you don't want to have that slightly longer walk from your resort room to your lobby, depending on where you're at with those standard view rooms. You might want to get a preferred in that scenario, but that is something that typically doesn't usually bother me. If this was helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more resort rundowns and reviews that I will be sharing in the upcoming weeks. And feel free to comment below any questions that you might have about Disney's Port Orleans Riverside. I would be happy to assist. And if you're interested in getting some assistance with details, questions, and even planning your stay at Walt Disney World and wondering would Riverside be a good resort for you, I'm going to leave my planning link below to work with me so we can get started for you. Until next time, keep chasing the moments that make your family's magic. Bye.